Tonight, let's step into the soft hallway where the house has gone quiet. Outside, the moon hangs like a thin clock. Inside, your breath keeps a slower rhythm. Inhale, exhale, a tide that knows its way. We're going to talk about time, not as a stern ruler of minutes, but as a gentle river that carries galaxies and heartbeats alike. Scientists measure it with the whispers of atoms and the bending of space-time. We feel it in the way a memory warms the dark, or how a sleepless thought stretches 1 minute into many. Both truths can live here, side by side, while the night holds us steady. You don't need to chase answers. Let them drift to you the way starlight drifts through a window. We'll wander softly between clocks and dreams, between the universe's grand machinery and the small, human hush of a pillow cooling under your cheek. If this kind of quiet wandering soothes you, a light touch on like and subscribe is enough. No hurry, no clatter, just a small signal in the dark that tells me you're here. Now, settle your shoulders, loosen your jaw, and feel the room dim a shade deeper. Time is waiting, and we will listen to it together. Time can stretch like moonlight across a quiet floor, then snap back like a rubber band. 10 minutes in traffic can ache like an hour. 10 minutes with a favorite hobby dissolves before you can name it. Yet the clock on the wall keeps its steady heartbeat second after second, minute after minute. What's happening isn't a betrayal by physics so much as a tender trick of the mind. Our sense of when things begin and end is elastic, shaped by attention, feeling, and the way memory lays down its threads. Psychologists call this subjective time, and it is the soft instrument we play without noticing, sometimes slow, sometimes swift, always human. Picture the slow kingdom of waiting. A clinic room hums with fluorescent hush, beige walls exhale sameness. A corner clock ticks with smug insistence. 5 minutes swell until they're heavy in your hands. With so little to touch your curiosity, your attention folds inward, listening to each grain fall through an invisible hourglass. When the world offers few surprises, the mind counts more carefully, amplifying each small beat. But let a lively conversation bloom, or let a good book pull you under, and the watcher in the brain grows drowsy. You're engaged, absorbed. It's as if the mind whispers, "We're busy, no need to watch the clock." Before you notice, the evening has slipped 2 rooms down the hall. This gentle disappearance has a name: flow. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi used it to describe those moments when attention is so full, the self grows quiet, and time thins to a ribbon. You become threaded to the task at hand. The clock might as well be another distant star. Effort softens at the edges, the room recedes, and you ride the current where skill and challenge meet. When you surface, the night has moved, though you hardly felt it go. Flow doesn't cancel time. It simply trades, counting for immersion, and the bargain feels like grace. Novelty, too, reshapes the river. When something new arrives, a city you've never walked, a recipe you've never tried, a melody your heart hasn't learned, the brain pauses to taste and catalog, writing a richer entry in the diary of you. Later, when you look back, there's more film to rewind, so the stretch of experience feels longer than the clock would predict. This is why childhood summers seem to unspool endlessly. Nearly everything is new, and the memory reel runs lush and bright. As routines harden and days repeat, the brain trims the footage, compressing familiar scenes into shorter reels. Fewer highlights, quicker playbacks, a sense that time itself has pressed the fast-forward button. feeling tugs on the weave as well. Fear and worry can make moments thicken, as if the air itself were syrup. Delight can make them feather light. In danger, the brain may record with denser strokes, tracing more detail per heartbeat. People who felt the lurch of a collision sometimes report that the world moved in slow motion. Time didn't truly crawl. The mind simply captured more frames, and the playback, later, stretches wide, like a long breath. Joy does the opposite, loosening our grip until hours slide like silk through open fingers. Then there is boredom, that patient animal. We say time flies when we're having fun. In boredom, it pads, paws, circles, and lies down on the chest. Some neuroscientists describe a kind of internal pacemaker. Yes, a real term whose pulsing becomes more noticeable when nothing else happens. More pulses mean more beats to count, and the minutes grow long. It's like an over-earnest drummer tucked somewhere behind the eyes, tapping each dull second so you won't miss it. The rhythm is honest, just not very kind. Culture and language teach metaphors that steer our inner clocks. In English, we spend time, save it, waste it, run out of it, coins rattling in a pocket. Other tongues treat time as weather or landscape, a set of conditions you move within rather than along. In some places, people gesture behind themselves for the future because it is hidden, and point ahead for the past because it is visible. What has happened stands before you, known and seen. The body's map becomes the mind's compass. Speak of time as a path, and you may hurry. Speak of it as a sky, and you may look up and breathe. But surely there is a clock inside us, some steady lantern in the dark. There is, and there isn't. We keep circadian time, a roughly 24-hour tide that pulls at sleep, temperature, and hormones. It is a day's metronome more than a precise stopwatch. For seconds and minutes, the brain entrusts the job to a scattered guild. The basal ganglia, the cerebellum, and allied regions pass signals like little torches down a corridor. The mind quietly counts neural pulses, compares them with expectation, and offers an estimate. Useful? Yes. Flawless? No. Distraction widens the wobble. When we try to pour ourselves into many tasks at once, time slips between our fingers. Emotion stirs the pot, salting seconds until they taste busier or emptier than they are. There's a familiar quirk called the return trip effect. The way there feels longer than the way back, even though the minutes match. On the outbound road, the landscape is unfamiliar. Your brain works harder to parse it, thickening the reel. Coming home, the mind recognizes the turns, relaxes its measuring hand, and the same distance feels lighter underfoot. And then, the snooze button, that universal spell. 9 minutes drowsing between alarms feels shorter than any other 9 minutes you could measure with a ruler. Research hasn't fully pinned the reason, but broken sleep and half-lit awareness are likely culprits. The inner stopwatch, jostled from dreams, tries to stand, wavers, smiles at its own clumsiness, and gives up keeping strict accounts. By the time it finds its footing, the next chime arrives, and you are caught mid-step between worlds, fingers still touching the edge of a fading shore. So what is time? To the one listening in the dark, a number on a face tells one truth, but the felt version is a living thing, part attention, part memory, part mood. It expands for love, shrinks under fear, accelerates with age as routines smooth the days, and sometimes, when we are utterly present, it dissolves into the pure now, like mist returning to dawn. Physics continues its noble work, measuring the universe's weave, following the curvature of space-time, tuning instruments to atomic whispers. Yet alongside that grandeur runs the smaller river we inhabit, wobbly, wonderful, tenderly unreliable. If you listen closely, you can hear both clocks at once. The outer one even and reliable, the inner one changing its gait to match what matters. Some nights they align, some days they drift. Between them, a life unfolds a ribbon of moments, sometimes satin smooth, sometimes knotted, always yours to feel. And when the mind grows gentle, when the room is dim and the moon sketches a pale road across the floor, both clocks seem to agree. The present is roomy and kind enough to hold you, just as you are, for as long as this breath lasts. If time is a riddle, our urge to measure it is the story of patient hands and restless hearts. From moons to metronomes, from shadows to atoms, we have spent ages coaxing an invisible river into marks we can read, schedule, and share. The sky was the first teacher. Sunrise stitched the day open. Sunset folded it shut. The moon painted a soft calendar across the weeks. Seasons slipped like slow tides. None of this needed batteries or bells. Only eyes, memory, and the willingness to look up night after night. In the Nile light, people lifted stone into song. Around 1500 BCE, Egyptians raised tall obelisks whose spears of shadow crept across the ground, dividing daylight into segments that lengthened and shortened with the year. An hour in summer lounged, an hour in winter kept a tighter coat. Imperfect, yes, but tenderly useful enough for planting and harvest, for prayer and procession, for the steady hum of a society that was almost certainly late for something now and then. Water added its voice. Clepsydra's water clocks let time flow at night or on cloudy days, each drop a small promise. Egyptians, Greeks, and Chinese shaped bowls and vessels, measured the level, carved scales, even built clever gears and figurines that chimed. They were early smart devices, only wetter and more patient, keeping company with judges and astronomers, with storytellers who needed a measured span for their tales. Elsewhere, calendars grew like constellations of thought. In Mesoamerica, Maya astronomers braided lunar and solar cycles into intricate counts, mapping days and destinies with a precision that still startles. Their long count reached across thousands of years, a stone bridge stretched over deep time. Without metal tools or beasts to pull their burdens, they held a cosmic ledger in their minds and monuments, proof that attention alone can be an instrument of wonder. Back in Europe, bells began to shape the hours. In the Middle Ages, great wooden and iron contraptions took root in churches and monasteries. They had no faces or hands. They marked time by voice, ringing the hour so monks could fold their days into prayer. Perhaps they were the first alarm clocks received with more serenity than the rest of us can muster at 6 a.m. Then came a small miracle of restraint, the verge escapement. In the 14th century, this ingenious gate metered the release of stored energy, letting wheels turn with steadier grace. Clocks grew more reliable and could shrink from towers toward tables and walls. Dials and hands followed, giving eyes what ears alone had known. Time not just heard, but seen, a public rhythm turned private and portable. By the 17th century, a pendulum found its arc. Christian Huygens tuned gravity into a heartbeat, and the swing delivered accuracy within about a minute a day, a leap that felt like mounting the wild horse of time with a proper saddle. Homes could trust their hearth-side timepieces, cities could keep better schedule, Astronomy could polish its mirrors against a steadier beat. The oceans then demanded even more. To know where a ship was on Earth required knowing the hour at a fixed home, and the sea does not coddle delicate machines. An English carpenter, John Harrison, spent decades courting precision that could survive salt, sway, and storm. His fourth chronometer, the famous H4, was a pocket-sized triumph, a sailor's star in brass. Longitude unfurled like a chart, and navigation changed from a felt art to a measured one, though many an old hand must have sighed, missing the romance of guesswork. Modernity hummed in crystal. In the 1,920 seconds, quartz oscillators began to vibrate under a whisper of electricity, steady as a monk's breath. Those vibrations could be counted, bringing accuracy that left springs and gears behind. Timekeeping shrank into wrists and dashboards, into station walls and radio rooms. And still we were not done. In the 1,950 seconds, timekeeping turned atomic, listening to the inner music of cesium and rubidium. A cesium atom ticks in microwave light, exactly 9,192,631,770 times for each second. That dance is the very definition written into the International System of Units. Run such a clock for 100 million years, and it would stray by less than a second, a boast so calm it feels like poetry. Hidden in secure rooms, these instruments beat together like a global choir, and the world takes its tempo from their invisible song. You touch their work every day. GPS satellites carry atomic time into the sky so maps can find your moving dot. Financial trades align across oceans. Telecommunications braid continents. The internet's servers nod in unison. Dripping water and wandering shadows gave way to atoms turning like microscopic metronomes. And an entire planet learned to agree on the moment. And yet, precision sits beside, feeling like a candle beside the moon. We carve hours, minutes, and seconds. We watch digits scroll. We sync our devices until they hum as one. Still, each of us inhabits time differently. We began to measure for planting and harvest, for prayer and meeting, for market and migration, for safety at sea. But under all those reasons beats something older: comfort. Rhythm is a hand-to-hold tick-tock, a modest reassurance from the universe that we are inside a pattern, not adrift. So we continue, refining the beat. Laboratories cool atoms with laser light. Engineers compare distant clocks by sending signals that arrive with nanosecond courtesy. Submarines count their hours far below sunlight. Observatories consult the crisp pulses of millisecond pulsars to check their own calm machines. We keep time to explore, to trade, to meet, to love, and also to feel less alone within the long dark. Perhaps that is why we keep building better clocks, not to trap time, but to make a gentler room for life within it. The measures do not tame the mystery. They give it a frame, the way a window frames the night, so you can love the darkness without being lost. Time remains elusive, but the beat we keep together says softly, "You are here, now, and this moment is enough to begin again, tonight, too." For most of our story as a species, time lived close to the skin. It woke with the pale edge of dawn, yawned with the evening star, and wandered through the hours to the gossip of birds and the bold declaration of a rooster. Bells gathered villages into the same breath. Shadows lengthened, and the day folded its wings. Time was local, felt, heard, and watched, never far from weather or horizon. Then, a quieter kind of thunder arrived in the form of Isaac Newton, who wished not only to describe the world but to anchor it. He imagined space and time as a vast, invisible stage upon which the universe performed its drama: planets and pebbles, apples and artillery, and later the friendly absurdity of a person on a unicycle, all moving across boards that never shifted beneath them. In this view, time was absolute. It flowed at a constant pace, everywhere, for everyone, forever, indifferent to the scenery, unmoved by the actors. He called it true and mathematical time, which from its own nature flows equably, a river with no eddies, whether anyone sails it or not. The intuition felt right. Drop an object here or tomorrow in a distant town, and Newton's equations could trace its path through this steady background, provided you were armed with calculus and perhaps a strong cup of tea. Time in this picture didn't jostle the experiment, it framed it. Because of that calm backdrop, motion could be named precisely, forces tallied, predictions made with a confidence that reshaped the world. Planets yielded their orbits, pendulums offered faithful swings, cannonballs confessed their arcs. With absolute time, nature could be persuaded into tables and charts, into navigational tables, and the comforting schedule of bells. Yet beneath this elegance slept a large assumption: that time was a thing in itself, humming along whether the world bothered to change or not, a cosmic metronome clicking in the dark. Not everyone was persuaded. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, Newton's fierce contemporary in both philosophy and the invention of calculus, argued for a gentler, relational view. Time, he said, is not an object, but a way of describing order, before and after, cause and consequence, event following event. In a universe emptied of happenings, a clock would keep no meaningful beat. Imagine it ticking in perfect darkness with nothing to mark, no dawn to approach, no fall to anticipate. To Leibniz, that tick is not time, only mechanism. Newton demurred. For him, the river flowed whether anyone came to the water. And in fairness, anyone who has stared at a still pot willing it to boil has felt time march on, with or without cooperation. The world followed Newton's lead for a long, fruitful while. Classical mechanics rose like a cathedral, arches of logic, buttresses of measurement, stained glass of elegant proofs covering under its vault the falling of stones, the swing of lanterns, the mannerly dance of moons and planets. Even the wobbling grace of a juggling unicyclist could be tucked into its equations with enough patience. The practical bloom was glorious. Clocks grew more precise, their hands less prone to wandering. Mariners crossed oceans with smaller circles of doubt. Engineers coaxed iron and steam into timetables that stitched cities together. A culture of schedule and reliability unfurled. If trains were late, at least there was a better number to be late by. Absolute time became not only a tool of science, but a background belief in daily life, a steady drumbeat we rarely questioned. But quiet revolutions begin as whispers. In the 19th century, experiments with light and electricity started to murmur that something was off. The speed of light, no matter the motion of the observer, refused stubbornly to budge. Chase it in your fastest carriage, or sit still beneath a lamplight, the beam's pace remained the same. In Newton's world, speeds add like coins. Here, the coins ignored your arithmetic. The mismatch simmered, puzzling and patient, until a young patent clerk would one day step into the room and open a new window. We will greet him in the next chapter. For now, let the door stand half open, a draft of fresh air beginning to move the curtains. Even as the cracks formed, Newton's vision kept shaping thought and culture. We still speak of time as a resource you can spend, save, or squander, a commodity that trickles through the fingers. School bells divide learning into neat parcels. Ovens and microwaves reassure us with minutes and seconds. Workdays march to a uniform cadence, as if the same drumline passed through every hallway. And for so much of ordinary life, this is perfectly good. A cake needs 35 minutes. The bus leaves at 7. A package is due next Tuesday. On these scales, in these gravities and speeds, Newton's time is a kind and faithful companion. Only when the world grows extreme does the picture blur, when motion skims near light's pace, when gravity clenches into fierce curvature, when we peer into realms so small that certainty flickers. At those edges, the steady stage begins to ripple, and a new script takes over. But the achievement of the older play remains. A universe that could be trusted to act tomorrow as it did today, so long as we mind the forces and the masses and keep the clock in view. So let us give Newton his quiet standing ovation. He offered a middle chapter with clockwork clarity, a place in the story where order took the lead and prediction felt like a form of love, careful attention paid to how things move. He made time something we could coordinate by, plan with, and believe in, at least for a vast and useful stretch of experience. Yet time, as it turns out, wears more than one face. Sometimes it is the universal river he imagined, flowing evenly past every shore. Sometimes it is contextual and relational, braided into the happenings themselves. The universe, charming trickster that it is, can hold both moods. We carry that duality into our days, the kitchen timer and the sunset, the spreadsheet and the heartbeat, the train schedule and the hush before sleep. For much of what we need, Newton's calm river carries us well, and still, elsewhere, the water is preparing to bend. If Newton pictured time as a river running even and true, Einstein stepped into the night and pressed a careful hand against the riverbed, feeling the current twist and deepen. He suggested, with the soft audacity of clarity, that time is not a single stream for all, but a fabric stretched with space, capable of slack and tension, of ripples and folds. In the first act of this new story, 1905, a young patent clerk walks to work under Swiss light and returns with special relativity. The laws of physics hold for everyone, everywhere, and the speed of light is a stubborn constant, unchanged, whether you chase it or turn your back. From that constancy spills a surprise. Simultaneity is not a universal handshake. Two events that clap together for one observer can part their palms for another who moves swiftly by. From here, the night grows wonderfully strange. The faster you travel, the more gently your own seconds fall. Time dilation, we call it, though the phrase hides how intimate it feels. A wristwatch that lounges, a heartbeat that counts in a roomier rhythm, a strand of hair that takes its time to grow. Sail near light's speed, and your personal clock ticks slower than the one waiting at home. When you come back, Earth has hurried a bit farther than you have. This is not a parlor trick, but a measured hush. Atomic clocks flown around the world return with the faintest lag, a sliver of difference so small you'd miss it unless you listened with instruments tuned like larks. The famous twins underscore the tale. One stays to water the plant and feed the cat. The other loops the galaxy at high velocity. They embrace years later, still twins, but not the same age. No paradox at all, just the geometry of time, revealing that different paths through space-time carry different lengths of lived moment. Speed is not the only weaver at the loom. In 1915, Einstein widened the frame to include gravity and gave us general relativity. Gravity, not as a tug, but as curvature, the way mass and energy ask space-time to bend around them. Imagine a heavy sphere on a pliant sheet. Lines that were straight now slope inward, and motion follows the curve. Time is painted on that sheet. So when the sheet bows, the clock's face stretches too. Near mass, near mountains, planets, stars, time is a little thicker, walking with smaller steps. Farther out, it floats more freely. This, too, has been heard by careful ears. Two precise clocks, one at a valley floor and one high on a mountain, drift gently apart. The lower one, held closer by Earth's gravity, ticks a whisper slower. Raise or lower a clock by mere centimeters, and the difference can be teased out. So the small, private joke is true. Your head is aging a touch faster than your feet. Gravitational time dilation is not an abstract poem. It is a practical correction written into the machines that guide us. GPS satellites circle above us, juggling both stories at once. Speed slows their time. Altitude hastens it. Engineers thread both effects into the code so that when you ask your phone for a path home, the answer arrives with tender accuracy rather than wandering miles away into the wrong city. Time wobbles. Technology learns to sway with it. Allow the picture to ripen a little more. In Einstein's view, space and time are not separate halls, but one room with a changed geometry, depending on who is walking and what heavy presences live nearby. The metric, the ruler the universe uses, stretches and contracts, and your passage through it defines your personal tempo. That means there is no single, absolute now that blankets the cosmos. There are many nows, stitched to motion and location, overlapping like translucent pages. We do not feel this in daily life because our speeds are modest and Earth's gravity is gentle. Our divergences are no more than eyelash widths in an ordinary day. But the principle hums everywhere, a quiet bass note under our errands and meals. It can help to picture it this way. Time is woven to what matters: mass, motion, energy, and responds. The way fabric responds to the weight of a sleeping cat. Push, and the cloth dips. Move quickly across it, and the threading chooses a different path for your stride. Your seconds and mine are kin, but not identical twins. They are siblings whose ages depend on how we travel and where we linger. In this light, the cosmos feels less like a clock on the wall and more like a dance floor, where steps depend on the song and the partners near you. Notice how this gentles certain phrases we love. Running out of time becomes less of a single door closing everywhere at once and more of a local rhythm, one tempo among many. The universe is not withholding, it is textured. A black hole slows the beat until moments hardly pass. A satellite rides a quicker breeze. The same physics that stretches time by mountains and stars also braids it into the architecture of galaxies, helping light bend around clusters and whispering to planets how to keep their long appointments. Even our instruments conspire with this fabric. Radio telescopes listen to pulsars, clocks that pound the dark with metronomic flashes, and we compare their remote steadiness with our own, checking the seams of reality for looseness. And while this can make the mind tilt, there is a kind of comfort here. Time is no longer the impersonal backdrop Newton imagined, but a participant responsive, relational, tender to circumstance. It is elastic enough to hold both the astronaut's drawn-out seconds and the baker's reliable half-hour, the high-speed pilot's softened minutes, and the gardener's summer afternoon. We move through a world where now is personal yet coherent, where difference is tiny at our scale but colossal near light and gravity's deeper wells. So, when someone sighs that they are nearly out of time, you might smile and think of satellites and mountains, of clocks at sea level and clocks on hilltops, of twins reunited at different ages, and airplanes carrying careful seconds through night air. Time is not fleeing in a single straight line. It is flowing in many small streams, braided, shaped by motion and mass. Perhaps you only answer with kindness. There is usually enough time for that. Or perhaps you keep the thought as a private lullaby. The universe is dancing, and time keeps different steps for every partner. Breathe with it. Let the fabric settle around you. Somewhere above, a satellite corrects its clock by a sliver. Somewhere below, the Earth holds time a fraction closer. And here, in your own quiet gravity, the second in your hand opens like a small, steady light. Imagine waking to a world gently unspooling in reverse. Toast leaping from your mouth to land, buttered on its plate. Tea warming back toward a tiny sunrise in your cup. Raindrops lifting like silver seeds to rejoin the clouds. It sounds like dream logic, but the deeper strangeness is that many of nature's most fundamental equations wouldn't protest. Run them forward, run them backward, they keep their poise. Two particles meet and scatter, and whether you play the film as shot or in reverse, the mathematics hums the same tune. And yet, our days refuse to mimic that symmetry. Eggs do not reform their shells. Paper does not unburn. We remember a birthday, not one that hasn't happened. The difference is not in the tidy lines of the laws, but in the way the world, at human scale, prefers to move. Physicists borrow a quiet metaphor for this one-way motion, the arrow of time. It points from what has already settled into the ledger toward what is still blank. Why? The answer the universe most often gives is written in the second law of thermodynamics. In a closed system, the grandest example being the cosmos itself, entropy tends to rise. Entropy is a careful word for disorder, for the way energy spreads and options multiply. It is why a neat room drifts toward clutter unless you intervene, why a scrambled egg does not unscramble, why the universe seems to like many microstates that look messy more than the rare, precise arrangements that look neat. The equations would allow the shards of a glass to spring together. The odds sit calmly against it, so overwhelming that no, and astronomically unlikely, become nearly the same feeling. Picture the moment. A tumbler slips and breaks. Afterward, pieces lie far apart. Tiny vibrations have rushed into air and floor. Heat has dispersed in small, anonymous ways. To reverse this, every particle would have to conspire in exquisite coordination, energies and paths tuned to the whisper. The laws permit it. Probability almost never will. So the arrow points, steady as a heartbeat, toward the room with more ways to be. Then a question arrives and lingers like a distant bell. If entropy grows, why did the universe begin so low? The early cosmos, just after the Big Bang, appears to have been astonishingly smooth and uniform, a simple beginning from which complexity could flourish. Expansion and gravity took that plainness and encouraged patterns, gas gathering into galaxies, stars kindling, and eventually the casual mischief of lost socks. But the reason for the original low-entropy hush remains one of physics' tender mysteries. Perhaps the answer lives in the geometry of space-time itself. Perhaps the question is a mirror we keep turning the wrong way. We look outward with our small lamps and learn to be patient with the dark. Other arrows align with entropy's pointing, as if the whole fabric had been stitched with threads running the same direction. There is the psychological arrow. We recall what has been, because memories are physical chemical traces, strengthened synapses, proteins folded and refolded. To form a memory is to write something into matter, a little increase in the book of arrangements, a local rise in entropy that makes a moment stick. The future leaves no such imprint because it hasn't offered its details yet. No trace means no recall. There is the causal arrow. Causes walk ahead of effects. You flip the switch, and then the room brightens. Energy moves outward, light diffuses, and possibility spreads. And there is the cosmological arrow. The universe is expanding, cooling as it grows, distances opening like quiet corridors between galaxies. That widening lends direction to the whole story. Some wonder if the cosmos were to contract one day, would time feel reversed? The thought is a meadow for theorists to wander. For now, the grass bends the way the wind is blowing. Comfort lives in the way these arrows keep each other company. Memory, causality, expansion, and entropy are not four strangers crossing a street, but facets of one gesture the universe keeps making. Together, they reassure us that the sensation of before and after is not merely a trick of attention. It is rooted in the way energy disperses, in how patterns tend to loosen unless we spend effort to hold them tight. Of course, not everyone is convinced that time's direction is fundamental. Some voices suggest the arrow is emergent, like a melody arising from many instruments rather than a single note. Under certain interpretations of quantum mechanics, time is only a parameter, a label for how states are arranged, not a current you can cup in your hand. The universe, in that view, does not feel time flowing. We do. Our minds, our bodies, our technologies are all layered systems that make records and tell stories, and from those stories a direction appears useful, consistent, deeply lived. This does not make the arrow less real. It makes it local to the way we exist. Every breath, every cooling mug, every aging photograph participates in a vast, shared tendency toward more possible arrangements. We cannot step outside that current to watch it from the bank. We are made of its water. We can, however, learn to sense its texture. We can notice how a future cannot be remembered, but can be imagined, how a cause does not bow to its effect, how the universe, warmed and close at the beginning, has been drawing its heat into thinner veils ever since. So when the familiar ache appears, that sense of time slipping like sand, remember that it is not slipping wrongly. It is moving as the world prefers to move, from the tidy beginnings toward the flowering of many, from the narrow to the wide. Nothing essential is lost. It is dispersed, softened, shared. You leave behind warm cups and opened envelopes, scuffed floors, and stories that have already chosen their verbs. The arrow continues, quiet and certain, and you move with it, not rushed, not late, simply carried. Somewhere, a desk will need straightening, a door will close on cooled air, a memory will settle into place like a page pressed flat. Entropy increases, as it must, and still, there is gentleness in the motion. Forward, always forward, with a small trail of socks and teacups glowing faintly in the wake. If classical physics keeps time like a punctual railway, steel wheels, fixed timetables, whistles on the dot, quantum mechanics plays after hours in a shadowed club. The melody drifts, doubles back, lands on a blue note, then smiles as if to say, "Did you expect anything else?" Just when the tune seems settled, someone sets a sealed box on the piano and asks you to hum along without knowing whether the cat within is purring or perfectly still. Welcome to the quantum neighborhood, where certainty softens at the edges and time behaves less like a ruler and more like a mood. In the ordinary world, you can point and say, "There it is, doing this, right now." At the smallest scales, things refuse such simple captions. Particles arrive as probability waves, clouds of might be and could be, a haze of positions and momenta that sharpen only when we press too hard. So where, in this shimmering fog, does time belong? Strangely, not at center stage. In quantum theory, time often shows up as an external parameter, useful, steady, and curiously aloof. We feed it into the equations like a metronome set off to one side, keeping count while the music does as it pleases. Consider the Schrödinger equation, the lullaby of non-relativistic quantum mechanics. It tells how a wave function swells and folds as moments pass, but the moments are supplied from outside the system. Time here does not bend or sag. It does not listen to mass or energy. It simply ticks. Space, fields, and probabilities dance inside the frame, while time, oddly Newtonian, keeps the beat without being part of the band. It's an elegant split. Quantum mechanics explains how states evolve over time, but says little about what time itself is. Invite gravity into the room, and the atmosphere changes. General relativity insists that space-time is responsive. Mass and energy tell geometry how to curve, and geometry answers by telling matter how to move. Time there is elastic. It slows near mountains, relaxes at altitude, and stitches itself differently for travelers on diverging paths. Try to marry that supple fabric to quantum rules, and sparks begin to fly. Each theory is magnificent on its own. Together, they pull the rhythm in incompatible ways. This tug-of-war blossoms into the problem of time. If you attempt to describe the entire universe, fields, quanta, geometry itself, using quantum language, something uncanny happens. The symbol for time disappears. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation, a candidate chorus for the whole cosmos, resembles Schrödinger's song, but carries no ticking variable. No past or future live inside it, only a state that simply is, a timeless wave. How can we wear watches if the largest description of everything knows no hours? One reply is that time may be emergent, the way warmth appears only when many molecules jostle together. A single particle has no temperature, a roomful sings in degrees. Likewise, perhaps no solitary quantum carries time, but ensembles weave a direction that feels like flow when viewed from far enough away. Another thread turns to entanglement, that intimate linkage in which distant partners share a single story. As entanglement spreads, correlations thicken. Some researchers wonder whether the arrow we feel before to after rises from the growth of those hidden ties. More tangle, more apparent time. There is also the many worlds view, where measurement doesn't pick one outcome, so much as place you on a branch among many. The universe does not roll dice, it blossoms. Every quantum event is a fork. Timelines flower outward into a vast arbor of possibilities. In such a garden, time is not just a river, but a tree. You move along a limb that keeps dividing, while other yews respectfully elsewhere step onto neighboring boughs. Nothing random is chosen. Rather, reality keeps all the verses, and you read one line at a time. If all this makes time sound fragile, why does it feel so sturdy at our scale? Because countless quantum flickers average into steadiness. Decoherence, the quiet process by which quantum possibilities leak their phase into the environment, washes away interference and leaves crisp facts we can live by. Brains, woven from thunderstorms of neurons, infer order from avalanche-sized statistics. We wake, brush our teeth, eat, and leave, in that sequence, because our bodies and cities are classical enough to keep the score. The jazz underneath is real, but the choir above it carries the tune. Still, the undertone softens how tightly we grip the tail. A second may be less a bead on a string than a change of state, a reweighting of probabilities, the wave function folding as knowledge arrives. The present becomes a conversation between what could happen and what has. Even the language of clocks bends a little under the news. It is 10 to midnight, your watch declares. Yes, quantum whispers. From within this frame, along this branch, where the environment has chosen a basis and you have taken your place. Quantum gravity keeps sketching bolder pictures. Hints appear in models where geometry itself emerges from entanglement patterns, as if space were a tapestry of correlations, and the warp of that tapestry set durations. Perhaps time's tempo reflects how quickly relationships among degrees of freedom reorganize. Perhaps the sensation of flow is the mind stitching discrete updates into a continuous lullaby. Or perhaps the deep answer will be stranger and kinder than any of our metaphors allow. None of this cancels the comfort of a routine heartbeat. It only reminds us that beneath the calendar, there is a softer mechanics. Time, in quantum land, is not broken. It is contextual. It borrows rhythm from the system at hand and from the questions we ask. At small scales, it behaves like jazz. At larger scales, like a hymn. And somehow, both songs share the same night air. So keep your appointments. Set the bread timer. Whisper good night to the cat, boxed or not. The watch on your wrist will keep good faith, even as the deeper score wavers and resolves. And if you listen gently, as the room grows quiet, you can hear both musics at once. The steady tick you live by, and the soft improvisation the world hums underneath, agreeing for now that it is, in this place, this moment, almost midnight. Time doesn't only sweep across skies and calendars, it hums inside you, a soft engine tucked beneath your ribs. It threads through sleep and appetite, steadies mood and focus, and gives shape to the hours when you feel most alive. Whether you rise gladly with first light or bloom after midnight's hush, your body keeps a private schedule, an old one, tuned by a choir of tiny clocks. Scientists call this circadian rhythm about a day, and it lives in nearly every living thing that grows or breathes or quietly divides. If it's alive and even a little organized, it likely tells time, not with numbers, but with patterns carved by light and dark. In your brain sits a conductor the size of a grain of rice, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, just above where your optic nerves cross. A strategic perch. Every morning, when light slides into your eyes, this conductor lifts its baton. Signals ripple outward, body temperature nudges upward, hormones adjust their tides, and the day, as your cells understand it, begins. At night, when light thins, the conductor lowers the volume and invites melatonin onto the stage. Melatonin is not a sedative so much as a lantern dimmer, whispering to the body, "Now, please, rest." You can ignore the cue, of course. Screens are fluent at postponing lullabies. Left in perfect darkness, your inner clock runs just a little long, about 24.2 hours for many people. So without morning light to reset it, your sleep would drift later, step by small step, until noon felt like dawn. Sunlight, especially in the first hours of day, anchors that drift, sinking you to the planet's turn. When the anchor slips, you feel it. Jet lag is that small storm. You step off a plane, and your brain swears it's midnight, while the local street vendors are selling lunch. The SCN may retune in a day or two, but the rest of your body, liver, gut, immune sentries can lag behind, still humming yesterday's song. Artificial light complicates the dance. Long before bulbs and blue-lit rectangles, people moved with the sky. Wake at sunrise, slow at dusk, sleep beneath a lid of stars. Now our rooms hold a second daylight. Blue wavelengths especially are persuasive, nudging the SCN to think the afternoon continues, delaying melatonin, pushing sleep further down the hall. It isn't that we have all become night owls. It's that we've invited a neon owl inside and given it the remote. Small changes help warm light after dusk, a glimpse of morning sky. But the deeper lesson is simple. Light is the hand that winds the watch. Not every body keeps the same tempo. Some wake like larks, bright before breakfast. Others open like owls, focused when the streets are quiet. These chronotypes aren't moral verdicts. They're biology, braided with genetics and age. Teenagers often tilt toward night. Elders tend to drift earlier. If mornings feel like a foreign country, it's not laziness. Your neurons are simply convinced the sun isn't due yet. Work and school do not always listen, but the body keeps petitioning, and some of its notes are worth reading. There is health in aligning your hardest tasks with your natural climb of alertness. Body temperature marks the arc of the day. A dip before dawn, a rise through late morning, a peak in the late afternoon. Muscles feel more supple then. Reaction times shorten. Calculations sharpen. Many athletes set records when the internal thermostat is highest. Early meetings, by contrast, can feel like doing calculus with a mittened brain, not because you lack will, but because your physiology hasn't warmed its instruments. None of this is fixed like stone. It's a tide. But honoring the tide makes the rowing easier. The clock's reach is broad. Metabolism follows it. So does immunity and mood. There's even a field chronopharmacology that studies when medications work best. Some drugs ask for morning, when enzymes are primed to receive them. Others fold more gently into evening, when inflammatory signals quiet. Timing, it turns out, is another ingredient in the recipe, as important as dose. Hospitals dim lights to protect melatonin. Shift workers chase carefully timed bright breaks to stay aligned. Small habits, repeated, become scaffolding for steadier days. Plants keep their own quiet watches, leaves open to drink light and close like hands at night. Even in constant darkness, many continue to anticipate dawn because the rhythm is written within them. A sunflower does not turn because it sees. It turns because it remembers, its stem lengthening on one side, then the other, the way a dancer remembers a step, even with eyes closed. Birds launch migrations on schedules older than maps. Bees time their visits to flowers. Rodents store and forage by the moon. Even fungi, those soft cities under logs, release spores on calendars that no clock on a wall could guess, and yet are as dependable as rain. Altogether, the picture is tender and grand. Life on Earth, breathing in time. Not the atomic time that guides satellites, but biological time, braided with light and shadow, hunger and rest, warmth and the cool edge of dawn. When you feel drowsy at 3 in the afternoon, or bright and talkative long after midnight, it isn't random mischief. It is rhythm expressing itself through you. The trick isn't to banish rhythm, but to collaborate with it, to place your hardest work where the day lifts you, to place your softest tasks where the day asks you to soften. If alarms and calendars are our attempt to bend time outward, circadian rhythms are time bending us inward toward balance. A morning walk is more than fresh air. It's a message to the SCN. A dimmer switch in the evening is more than ambience. It's permission for melatonin to rise. Meals that keep regular company with the sun teach the liver when to expect its guests. Even brief glances at the sky, the blue clarity of noon, the amber slope of dusk, are forms of alignment, little handshakes between the world and the watcher. We inherit these clocks from an ancient conversation between life and the turning earth. Long before time zones, they kept our ancestors safe, waking them when light made travel wise, steeping them in sleep when darkness drew predators near. We still carry that conversation, even if the modern night is bright and the morning sometimes arrives in a rush. Beneath schedules and crowded inboxes, your cells remain faithful to the sun, adjusting by small degrees, patient and precise. Listen, and you can hear them. A gentle drumbeat, a metronome made of chemistry and light, keeping the day on your side. Have you noticed how time plays favorites? A holiday week drifts by like a feather on a warm current, while the last 10 minutes of a call you never wanted can feel like being slowly stirred in rice pudding forever. That tilt isn't only poetry. It is the mind's quiet physics, psychological time, showing how the felt flow of moments can wander far from clocks and calendars. If physics asks what time is, psychology asks how it feels, and the answers rarely march in lockstep. Begin with the familiar enchantment. Time flies when attention is lovingly occupied. Laughter with friends, hands busy with a favorite craft, eyes gripped by a story. You are so present that the mind forgets to count. Seconds stop behaving like beads on a string and turn into light on water, rippling and gone. Boredom reverses the spell. When nothing engages you, waiting rooms, loading wheels, the 15th explanation of something you never asked to learn, the mind turns inward and starts keeping score. Every tick grows tall. Each minute arrives in heavy boots. We don't so much live those intervals as measure them, and measurement makes them larger. There is also the odd duet between prospective and retrospective time. While you are inside an experience, the rate feels tied to attention. Absorbed, it vanishes. Unengaged, it drags. Afterward, memory rewrites the tempo. A week hiking unfamiliar trails may pass quickly while lived, yet feel long in recollection, dense with scenes and scents, novelty laying many bookmarks along the path. A routine week, wake, work, stream, sleep, can feel slow as it happens, then collapse into a blur when recalled. Fewer markers mean a thinner record. The brain compresses the footage. This is one reason the years seem to quicken with age. Childhood is all firsts, and firsts take up more mental sky. Adulthood prefers loops, and loops braid hours into rope. Emotion leans on the scale as well. Fear, surprise, and stress can make moments feel syrup thick. Volunteers stepping from great heights or riding sudden drops often report stretched instants. One account is that a brain in alarm captures more detail per second, building a denser record that, when replayed, lengthens like slow motion. Yet performance during the event does not magically sharpen. The The stopwatch keeps its steady voice. Memory paints the extra length. The clock does not. The experience grows larger afterward because the mind has more frames to show you. Attention is the master key. When you fix your gaze on time cookies in the oven, progress bars creeping each second presents itself for inspection. When attention braids itself into music, conversation, or a page that holds you, time steps back like a courteous usher. Mindfulness takes this seriously. To rest attention on breath, sound, or sensation is not to abandon reality. It is to stop measuring it so tightly. When counting loosens, the present grows spacious. You are no longer racing the hour. You are inhabiting it, as if your awareness were a lamp set closer to the table, lighting only what you need. Sometimes the mind enters rooms where time's furniture is rearranged. Deep meditation, grief or ecstasy, creative absorption, even certain altered states can slow, speed, loop, or empty the sense of time entirely. People speak of timelessness as if they briefly stepped from the river to the bank and watched the current without being carried. In the brain, such reports often travel with a quieting of the default mode network, the cluster that spins stories of self, stitches memories, and keeps private calendars. When that network settles, identity softens, narration fades, and the grip of before and after relaxes. The moment seems to widen, not because the clock changed, but because the storyteller put down the pen. Children keep another calendar. For the very young, 5 minutes is a cloud shape, a snack length, a forever until. Only with clocks, school bells, and the famous just a few more minutes does adult time settle in, trading fluidity for schedule. Some call that shift a small loss of innocence. Yet there is grace in learning to move with shared rhythms, to weave one heartbeat into many. Childhood's lush novelty also explains why early years feel so long in hindsight. The brain was busy marking everything. Later, routine teaches efficiency, which is useful for tasks, and unkind to memory's texture. Anticipation stretches the fabric too. Waiting for a joy lengthens the corridor. Dread does the same, but with heavier air. The machinery for imagining tomorrow borrows from the same circuits that retrieve yesterday, so rehearsal and recall tug on time with equal hands. Hope and worry both place stones in the stream. The water eddies as it passes. Is it Friday yet? And let it be over are simply two accents in the same language of stretching, written with breath, held in different ways. Is psychological time reliable? Not especially. Logical? Not consistently. But it is achingly human. We inhabit a universe of atomic ticks and planetary turns, yet the time that colors us is woven from attention, memory, emotion, and imagination, time felt, not measured. That is why it seems personal, peculiar, beautifully inconsistent. It is also why two people can share a day and describe two different lengths of it. One lived mostly in counting, the other mostly in presence. There is comfort in this. Once you stop demanding that the mind be a chronometer, you can nudge the current. Seed your days with novelty, a new street, a different spice, a changed chair at the table, and memory will make those days wider in hindsight. When life runs jangly fast, lower your gaze to one breath, one sound, one small texture in your hand. You cannot live an entire hour at once, but you can live this moment fully, and the hour will take care of itself. When boredom pries the minutes apart, move toward a small wonder. Step outside and count the leaves in one square of tree, or listen for the faintest sound in the room. Attention chooses the instrument. experience follows its music. If the future sometimes feels like a cliff edge you cannot see beyond, remember that the mind is both cartographer and traveler. It draws maps from memories, predicts weather from old storms, and that is useful until it isn't. Step closer to the day. Stir the soup, open the window, let fresh air touch the curtains in your face. The more intimately you meet the present, the less you need to measure it. Even dread loses some of its teeth when greeted in smaller mouthfuls of now, chewed slowly and swallowed with breath. So let the clocks keep their honest beat. Let physics tell its luminous truths. Meanwhile, cherish the way a holiday can open like a lantern, and the way a dull appointment can be softened by a pocket-sized wonder, a sentence that surprises you, a melody you haven't heard in years. The sight of late light settling on a wall. Time will still play favorites. It can be a rascal, but you are free to befriend it. Your attention is the instrument. Memory is the echo. Feeling is the key that changes. Close your eyes for a moment and feel the night lean closer. The hour does not need to hurry. It only asks to be held exactly as it is, and then, very gently, it moves on. Let's be honest, no gentle night talk about time feels complete until we open the creaking door. Can we travel through time? The answer, like moonlight on water, shivers between yes and not quite. Physics doesn't bolt the door, it leaves it on the latch. In Einstein's picture, space-time is a supple fabric, able to stretch, curve, and in rare, mathematically exotic arrangements, even loop back upon itself. If a fabric can loop, perhaps a path could wander toward yesterday or lean forward into tomorrow. The dream is not entirely forbidden, it is merely demanding. Begin with the easiest version, slipping into the future. This one is real, quiet, already happening. Move very fast, close to light's unwavering speed, and your personal seconds stretch relative to the seconds kept by someone resting at home. A voyager who skims the galaxy and returns might find decades have crossed Earth, while only a handful of soft years brushed their own skin. Even astronauts aboard the station taste a grain of this. Because of speed and altitude, they come home older by microseconds less than those who never left. The difference is tiny, but measurable. No flux capacitor, only careful clocks and a patient universe. Future travel, checked, proven, tucked into the hum of our technology. The road backward is thornier. General relativity admits strange solutions, closed, time-like curves that look like stitches in the fabric of reality, loops where a traveler could, in principle, stroll into an earlier page of their own story. Wormholes wander into the mathematics as tunnels between distant rooms of spacetime. If one mouth were whipped near light speed and carried back, its clock would lag behind its partners. Step through the offset doorway and on paper you arrive in a different then. But paper is gentle, practice is not. We don't know whether wormholes exist. If they do, they may snap shut before anyone can say hello. To keep one open, the equations ask for negative energy, an exotic ingredient we do not yet know how to bottle. The engineering bill reads like a fairy tale, and not the easy kind. Suppose, all the same, a doorway opens. We meet the old snare, the grandfather paradox. If you prevent the meeting that led to your parent, who is now standing in yesterday making mischief, several lanterns have been raised along this foggy road. One is the block universe. All moments coexist, like frames on a film reel. Travel doesn't revise, it fulfills. Your visit was always part of the past. What you do there is already woven in. Another lantern is the many worlds view, where changes bud new branches. You don't alter your original timeline. You step into a neighboring one. Somewhere, your grandparents meet and you still exist. Somewhere else, the story forks and continues without you. And then there's Novikov's self-consistency principle, which says paradoxes simply fail to occur. The universe prefers coherence. A plan jams, a letter misdelivers, rain sends you down a different street. You can push, but the plot bends itself back into harmony. None of these answers is proven. They are graceful ways to keep logic from tearing. And beyond logic is the practical whisper. If travelers from tomorrow could roam, where are the tourists? Perhaps a time machine can only reach as far back as its own first switch on no visitors before the invention date. Perhaps travelers are exquisitely discreet, gliding through our days without ripples. Or perhaps, despite the teasing equations, backward travel is simply impossible. The internet offers curious photographs and playful stories. Laboratories offer silence edged with wonder. Physicists still argue, kindly and fiercely, over whether energy conditions, quantum effects, or deep cosmic housekeeping forbid time loops in the end. Inside these speculations, a smaller truth hums about meaning. The one-way arrow we inhabit forward. Forward gives weight to choices and warmth to memory. We cannot splice our lives like film and reshoot a scene with better lines. We move through the only take we get, tenderly imperfect, sometimes brave, sometimes tired. The future's uncertainty trains our attention. The past's fixity gives us a place to stand. Still, it is sweet to imagine. Picture a traveler stepping through a humming frame into a spring night, careful not to startle the earlier self who stands beneath a dogwood. The blossoms lift, moths write pale cursive in the dark. Nothing ruptures, nothing needs repair. Two versions of one life share a breath, exchange a silent thank you, and gently part. In that daydream, there is no contradiction, only kindness arranged across moments, like flat stones set to help a crossing. So here is a soft verdict for the bedside hour. Traveling forward is as real as orbital paths and steadfast clocks. Traveling backward remains a rumor, framed by elegant geometry and enormous walls of practicality. If someone someday reads these words from a century hence, they may smile at our candlelit maps and earnest theories, the way we smile at sailors who trusted only stars. If you are such a visitor, welcome. Keep our surprises intact. Let our endings arrive unspoiled. Sit with us a while, in the quiet, before dawn. For the rest of us, rooted in now, another craft is available. Honor the seconds you have as if each were a small door that opens once. Carry regrets lightly. Let them advise without commanding. When you long to fix a sentence spoken years ago, try this instead. Breathe in, breathe out, and speak the truer line to someone near you now. That is a kind of time travel the universe reliably permits, a correction sent forward instead of backward. The river continues, and we can face downstream with open hands. And if urgency rises, if you ache to mend what cannot be revisited, look up. The starlight touching your window left its sources years, centuries, eons ago. In a quiet way, your gaze is a meeting of times, the present receiving an ancient glow. Let that be enough wonder for one night. Close your eyes. Let the current carry you. The future will arrive exactly as it must. The past will remain exact in its blessing and its ache. Between them, this breath, the only doorway always open, waits for you, patiently, here. After wandering through ticking mechanisms and soft human minutes, after bending clocks near black holes and peeking through the paper doors of wormholes, we arrive at a question that glows like a coal at the center of the night. Does time actually exist? It sounds like the kind of puzzle traded at 2 a.m. over lukewarm tea and hopeful eyebrows. But physicists ask it in laboratories and on chalkboards, too. Because the deeper we dig past schedules and sundials, past relativity's geometry and quantum theory's whisper, the more the ground gives way beneath our feet. What we call time begins to blur, then thin, then, in certain lights, vanish. Most days, we treat time as a gentle river. The current carries us from the known shore of the past into the wet, bright edge of the present and onward toward the mist of the future. We cannot paddle upstream. We float, sentence by sentence, heartbeat by heartbeat. This lived sense, the idea that only now is real, is called presentism. The past is gone except as a trace. The future is unmade. Only this breath wears the crown. Presentism harmonizes with daily life, alarms and appointments, steaming cups, cooling on the table, a favorite song, reaching its last note, and then surrendering to silence. But another picture waits just beyond the bend. Eternalism, sharpened by Einstein's insight, offers a universe that doesn't flow at all. All moments, your first day of school, a lunch you have not yet eaten, a conversation that will soften you in 10 years, exist together in a four-dimensional block. You do not move through time. You are located within space-time, a thread stitched through a quilt whose squares are all present to the whole. In such a block universe, now is local and slippery. What counts as simultaneous depends on how you move. Two observers, sliding past one another at different speeds, do not agree on the slice they call the present. If there is no single cosmic now, then the intuition of a universal spotlight sweeping along the timeline becomes hard to defend. Time in this view is not a river with one direction. It's an entire landscape, and our path is simply one drawn line across it. Then quantum gravity wanders into the room, dimming the lamps in a new way. When we try to marry quantum mechanics so good at small things with general relativity, so faithful to the curvature of the large time, often drops out of the equations. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation, a bold attempt to write the quantum state of the whole universe, has no time variable at all, no ticking parameter, no advancing index. A cosmos described as a single, timeless state, not before and after, but just is. If the bedrock language doesn't mention time, is time an added story, useful, beloved, but not fundamental? One path through this thicket is the idea of emergence. Some features of the world appear only when many parts move together. Temperature, for instance, means nothing for a single molecule. Only a crowd sings in degrees. Sound isn't in a single air parcel. It arises when parcels push and pull in concert. Perhaps time is like that, no basic ingredient, but a pattern that reveals itself when countless relationships change. Imagine a movie, frame upon frame, separate, still, shown quickly. The mind perceives motion, plot, causality. The film becomes alive with time. Maybe reality is a stack of relational frames, and our experience stitches them into a story, giving us the felt flow that clocks merely echo. Physicist Julian Barbour leans even further into this possibility. In his picture, reality is a grand gallery of nows, complete, timeless configurations of the universe. These nows do not evolve, they simply exist. What you call memory is structure within a now, records embedded in matter, hints that point to other nows in a way that suggests sequence. Consciousness leafs through the album and, in turning pages, invents the sense of passage. There is no cosmic second hand, only an arrangement of snapshots with clues that imply direction. It is radical, yes, but not dismissible. It treats our experience seriously, without insisting the universe share our intuition. Of course, not everyone is willing to retire time to the museum of metaphors. Many argue that even if time emerges from deeper, non-temporal relations, emergent does not mean unreal. Boiling water yields steam. The steam is real enough to fog your glasses. Clocks tick together. Planets keep appointments. Radioactive atoms decay at rates we trust to date ancient fires. If instruments that measure change agree with one another across laboratories and centuries, perhaps that is sufficient reality time as a structure that organizes events, even if the scaffold is woven from quantum relationships rather than carved from absolute flow. Between these poles, presentism's river and eternalism's block, timeless equations and emergent rhythms, our lives go on. We plan and remember. We feel afternoons lengthen or lunchtime vanish. We light candles on cakes and say the number aloud. The science reframes our questions, but the questions still land in the body. If all moments exist in a block, why do we feel one page at a time? If the bedrock is timeless, why does the heart find such relief in sequences? Before, during, after? A partial answer: the arrow we ride is anchored in entropy and memory. Records must be written somewhere. The writing leaves scars. Scars point backward. Brains, tuned for survival, turn those marks into narrative, and the narrative becomes a lantern we carry through the dark. There is a gentleness in accepting that time could be both less and more than we thought. Less fundamental, perhaps, and more personal. Less like a river outside us, and more like a grammar through which reality speaks to our kind of mind. If so, then time is as real as stories are real. Not an object you can place on a scale, but a shape that allows events to make sense. It is the syntax of becoming, the cadence that turns change into meaning. And if one day a deeper theory writes the universe without mentioning time, we will still arrange our days by its music, the way we continue to walk in rhythm, though no drummer is in sight. So, does time exist? The soft answer is yes and no, depending on where you stand and how close you look. At the most fundamental levels, where geometry knits itself from quantum threads, time may not appear in the pattern. Step back, and patterns of change conspire to produce a dependable beat. Step further, into kitchens and classrooms and hospitals and parks, and time is as tangible as hunger or grief or the relief of sleep. A lived structure that holds experience in order. It exists in equations that guide satellites, in hormones that rise at dusk, in the way a lullaby's last note invites a room to grow darker. We may never hold time in our hands the way we hold a stone, but we can feel its edge against our skin. It reminds us that everything moves. Tea cools, leaves fall, children outgrow shoes, galaxies drift. It suggests that moments are gifts exactly because they are passing, and also, in some strange eternalist sense, always present on their page. You are here timelessly, somewhere in the block, and fleetingly in this breath. Perhaps that double truth is enough. The universe can keep its quiet secrets. We can keep our human vow to notice. Lay your head down. Let the present widen. Whatever time is river, quilt, gallery of nows, it has made a cradle for you tonight. And in that cradle, for as long as this breath lasts, you are perfectly wonderfully, undeniably here. Lay the last page down like a quiet hand on still water. We've wandered the galleries of nows and the river that pretends not to flow, weighed time as story and scaffold, felt it soften into breath. There's nothing left to solve tonight, only a gentle agreement with the dark. Whatever time is, it's holding you. Let the room dim another shade. Screens go to sleep. The window becomes a soft mirror, your outline floating among faraway stars. Somewhere, clocks keep their honest beat. Somewhere else, a galaxy turns. Here, your chest rises and falls, a tide meeting the shore and slipping back again. With each exhale, the day loosens its buttons. With each inhale, the present opens, spacious and kind. If the universe is a quilt, tuck beneath it. If it's a river, drift. If it's a book of moments, let the next page turn itself. You don't have to carry the hours anymore. They'll find their own way. Lights fade to ember, thoughts to murmurs, constellations to a slow braid of silver. When you're ready, let your breath join the night steady, unhurried, until the edges blur and the stars seem to drift. The story doesn't end here. It simply grows quieter, and you are already floating, already home,